it was kind of like he was starting with the end in mind. And that's something that is difficult to do when you come screaming into a corner with your hair on fire, right?
Green flag.
Welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast, where amateur club racers tune in to get faster.
This episode is brought to you by Deechworks Fuel Systems. Visit deechworks.com for all your fuel system needs. On this episode of the Blind Apex Podcast, we're going to talk about an underutilized driver tool, in my opinion, the track walk. Before we get too deep into the episode, go to the podcast Instagram, the Blind Apex Podcast, all one word. Look for the giveaway we're doing with OG Racing to celebrate this podcast breaking into the top 100 for automotive podcasts on Apple. I bounce around in and out, but made significant strides this year. So we're going to celebrate a little bit, do a giveaway for the visitors. Speaking of top 100 podcasts, joining me is a repeat guest, author, driving coach. He's really an educator to the masses, co-host of the number one podcast in our genre. I believe it's the number one podcast in our genre. I personally feel that their new podcast name is targeting me specifically with It's Not the Car. The man with all the speed secrets, Mr. Ross Bentley. Welcome back to the podcast, sir.
Well, thanks for having me back. I guess I didn't totally ruin it the last time and make a complete fool of myself. So thanks for having me back.
I still call it weather and not the R word. So
good. Yeah. We don't talk. Well, I talk about the R word.
Yes, you can all you want.
Yeah.
It's fall baseball season. I'm extra superstitious now, but
okay. Yeah.
So, Mr. Bentley, what have you been up to these days, or since you last been on?
Oh, nothing much. Just lots of driver coaching, lots of creating content for drivers, everything from writing to videos to master classes and more. Like you said, It's Not the Car podcast, which I'm having a blast doing with Jeff and Sam. Doing that, and I don't know. Hey, I launched a thing called speedsecrets.ai, which is kind of like it's an AI, but it's only pulling from content that I created rather than all the stuff that's out there on the internet, which we all know is perfect. I know, but
if it's on the internet, it's true.
Exactly.
That's what they say, right?
Yeah. So just a lot of that, and just launched a new version of my speedsecrets.com website, and there's no shortage of things to do every day. All good though.
Yeah, I follow you on Instagram, and I see you're always like, guess what track I'm at this weekend, and guess where I am this weekend. And I'm like, wow, you definitely stay busy, especially on the coaching side. So,
and I actually have cut back a little bit on the travel this year. I got to say, in this world, I don't have a job, right? I get to do what I love to do. But travel, like if I never saw another airplane or airport for the rest of my life, I would be okay with that. So I'm actually cutting back a little bit on my travel this year. The fellow that I coach that races in IMSA, it's gotten to the point now where I can do that coaching remotely. I basically sit at home looking at squiggly lines coming across my screen, and I'm sending messages to the driver on the other side of the country, and then doing data and video review afterwards. It's kind of like everything I would do at the track, but without having to get on an airplane. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, technology is a wonderful thing. The technology in the car is getting easier to install, to use, and now to download and transfer, and easier for everyone to manipulate no matter where you are. So that's a blessing, I guess. I couldn't imagine how many frequent flyer miles and all that stuff you were getting. So
Yeah, well, the only downside of frequent flyer miles, you have to get on an other airplane to use them. I used to joke about, I wanted to call up United and say, hey, can I pay you? Can I give you 50,000 points and you just allow me to stay home for 3 weeks? But it didn't quite work out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to do when you had to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to. I'm sure there are people listening going, "Oh, poor you." I'm not complaining. Like I said, I get to do what I love to do, and I get to travel, and I get to meet some cool people, a lot of cool people, and yeah. So I'm not complaining whatsoever. But if I did have to complain, it would be I don't want to get on another airplane too soon.
Yeah, maybe they haven't been on an airplane recently, but the process kind of is terrible. The airlines are skimping here and there, and then to do it as frequently as you are, to fly, to be away from family, those types of things it'll wear on you eventually.
Yeah, it does. And again, it's first world problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You said you didn't have a job, and I disagree, because you have to put in the work. You're putting in the time. You're providing a service with the knowledge that you have, and you're getting paid for it. So it is a job. It's just not a job you can easily hate necessarily.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Sometimes I just say, I make a living doing my hobby, and that's a kind of how I like to look at it. The downside of that is, I will say there are people that go, well, if it's your hobby, why don't you just come and hang out with me this weekend at the racetrack and coach me?
Right.
And I'm like, well, yeah, but I do have to make a living. So
yes,
I wish I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And experience, my uncle says this all the time, experience is expensive. And so for you to share your experience and knowledge, it generally comes at a cost overall. So don't worry about it.
Yeah. In having just been working with a web developer to have my website redone, one of the things that I enjoy is I have a lot of freebie stuff on there. In fact, I now have a category in the menu that says freebies, and so it's I know what it's like starting this sport with no money, and I don't ever want to forget that. I want to keep that in mind, that there are people that I want to help who don't have a big budget. I get to work with some drivers who do have big budgets, but I don't ever want to forget the other end of that as well.
I took one of your master classes about self-coaching. So I was in it with Bill Fisher from Garage Heroes in Training. We basically challenged each other to improve this year. And then so we came together and said, okay, we're going to take this class. So we both signed up for it. It was a great class, and it's reasonable. The knowledge you're going to gain from your classes, it is well worth the money spent. And it really wasn't that expensive. I don't remember how much it was, but it wasn't expensive in the grand scheme of things. Excuse me. Especially when you look at what we tend to pour into our cars, less so the driver. Amazon's always coming to my house, FedEx, UPS. Yes. I can't tell you the number of packages that I've received this last week just to prepare for this off season.
Yeah.
One of your classes, especially, you get to pick which one you think applies to you. You as a driver, self-identify your weakness, pick a class. I implore you to take it. It was a great class, and I appreciate it. So, well, I
appreciate that. And it is funny. I mean, I've had, so a master class, I charge $150 for it. And that's sort of jamming 50 years of experience into that thing. And yet, I've had people go, $150. Wow. I can't afford that. And then, they've gone out and bought their third set of tires for the season or something. And, I always joke that what you learn in those kinds of things never wear out like tires do. So, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you could go back and you provide all the information, all the slides, the recordings, stuff. Like you provide that stuff so that we have it for, I say posterity, but really to self-refresh, right? So
Yeah, and I will admit that I always joke that, none of it works unless you use it. So it's like anything. You can bolt a brand new set of tires on your car, and if you don't really use that grip, you're not getting your money's worth out of it. So it's the same kind of thing.
for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk about track walking and taking track walks. I'd ask you to define it, but it's sort of a simple adventure, right? Track goes cold. Generally, the tracks tell you you can go, you can't go, and you walk around the track, usually actually pedaling a bike or a scooter. Sometimes at VIR, we took a car around, multiple trucks with people in the beds, those type of things. So you're not walking the entire track usually, but you are walking sections of the track. In your opinion, why should we be doing this practice?
So I'm a huge fan of track walks, and we can sort of talk about the timing of when the best time to do
Absolutely.
them is. But to me, I just look at it as it's an opportunity to see, feel, and learn things that you often can't at speed. And you can get into you can see a little bit more of the details. You can stop, you can look, you can feel, and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, it comes down to helping you create that mental image of the track. And the more, and this is sort of research that has been done around how we learn and things like that, but just pure experience. And my experience has been, the more different ways you experience something, the more it builds the right mental model for you. And if your only experience of a track is behind the wheel, driving at speed, obviously that's the most important part of the picture, the image, the model. But when you fill it in with some other stuff, like being able to walk through a corner, turn around, look backwards through a corner, and really kind of picture yourself coming from there to where you are now and seeing that, it just helps fill in the details. And it's you can't do that any other way. You can't get that level of detail any other way. You can't get it at speed. And I will say that there's sort of one other piece of why I love track walks is I feel like as a driver, we build a relationship with a track. And when you're walking the track and it's like you're connecting with it. It's, maybe it sounds a bit weird, but I like to think that I have built a relationship and connect with a track. I got to say, so 3 years ago, I did one lap of America, and you sort of hop from track to track to track to track, and you don't have a whole lot of time to learn the track. And by far the most enjoyable part of that whole experience of doing one lap was each morning going and doing a track walk. And typically, well, I'm going to say all but one track, I did all those track walks by myself. And there's just something about walking a track early in the morning and go, hey, we're going to be working together this afternoon or an hour from now. It's to me, it's a special time to connect with a track. I know, sounds weird, right?
No, I think you're right. When you're in the car at speed, you're definitely, if you're looking in your mirror at corner exit, you're not going to pick up what you can pick up by turning around and looking at the corner,
Yeah.
It's a blur. It's in a mirror. Your actual real focus is probably on the feel of the car and pointed forward, and you're just glancing, right? And those glances turn into a memory of a snapshot instead of being able to physically be there and really learn the angle, where you think you track out to, turn around and look back and then really see what's going on.
And one of the things that I've started doing a lot more in the past few years with drivers that I'm coaching is when we sit down and review video, in-car video, I will I'll stop the car just before the turn-in point and I'll ask the driver, can you see the exit of the corner? And sometimes you can in the stop video, but a lot of times, as you know, you can't see the exit of a corner when you're initially turning in. Think of turn 1 at Sebring with a concrete wall on the inside. Think about, even turn 1 at VIR. The corner is so long, sharp, you really can't see the exit when you're turning in. So if you stop the video and you start thinking about what does the exit look like? When you turn into a corner, you should have that exit image, exit curb, exit of the corner, that image in your mind. And so, yes, you can do that with a video. I'll actually, have the driver think about it there. Sometimes it'll be move the video forward, stop it there, and then rewind the video. Well, a better way to do that, or a more interesting way to do that, is to do it on a walk when you're walking around the track, to actually stop, position yourself at the exit of the corner, and then think about how did you get here. And there's this great one of the quotes I like to use when I'm talking about that is it's actually from the golfing great Jack Nicklaus. And Jack Nicklaus said something along the lines of, he never hit a golf ball in his life without picturing the ball where it's landed. So he would picture the ball, and this quote that I have from him said, there's that bright white ball on the green grass sitting there on the green. And then he saw in his mind the ball sort of coming back and sitting there right in front of him. And then he would hit the ball that way. So it was kind of like he was starting with the end in mind. And that's something that is difficult to do when you come screaming into a corner with your hair on fire, right? So if you do it enough times, or if you do it with enough intensity during a track walk, it just cements that image in your mind. So that's one of the things that's super valuable.
So you talked about the intensity. What type of mindset do you think we need to have when we go out on that track walk?
An open one. And I got to tell you, so early in my career, I don't know, somebody told me you should go and walk the track. So I'd go and walk the track. And everywhere I went, I would go and walk the track prior to ever driving on the track. And one of the things that I realized, and maybe this is just me, but I work with other drivers where this is the case, is you would walk the track, or I would walk the track, and I'd be walking through this corner that I didn't really know. And I'm walking through there going, okay, this is a second gear corner. So I imagine myself coming down here, braking, going into second gear, turning in, getting on the throttle here, and I do that as I was walking the track. And then I get on track and I drive it in second gear. And it seemed almost funny, but often it was the last lap of the first session. I would drive it in third gear and go, what was I doing? It's way better in third gear. So I think going in with an open mind and sort of being, not having any preconceived ideas, really just soak up the track and what you see and feel about it, and not kind of go, hey, I watched so-and-so driving his car in an in-car video on YouTube, and they're driving this corner like this. That's okay to have that in the back of your mind, but don't walk it thinking this is what I'm going to do. Think about it as that could be what I do, but I'm here just to think about what other things could I do. So I think, a key part of it is walking it with this open mind without any preconceived ideas. I think that's you need that for sure.
Yeah, the track walk is a time for discovery, right?
Yes, I love that.
It's really easy to self-validate and go, this is my reference point. I'm walking right to my reference point, right? Come back 10 feet, 20 feet, and then sort of take that picture in and then take it into your reference point. If you have to use your reference points, I think. Turn one at VIR is a golden example because I did comp school at VIR. I went and took we go there 3-4 times a year for NASA Mid-Atlantic. I watched your virtual track walks with Peter Krause. I watched it on VIR intently, and you guys were talking about the backside of the corner, it goes off camber, and this is you need to approach it probably in this manner depending on your car. Everything's car specific, right? So that's another thing you need to take in, I think, when you're out there. But I always knew the car didn't like the backside of turn one, but I didn't know why, and I wasn't picking that off camber stuff off at speed. I knew it wasn't great. I knew it wasn't perfect, but when you walk it, it's much worse than when you drive it. Like when you walk around that thing, you really notice it. So
I that's a great point in that often drivers will go, why do I struggle in this part of the corner?
Mm-hmm.
And then they go and walk it and go, oh, well, that's why. I noticed, I didn't notice at speed the camber change or the elevation change or the surface change. And until you take the time to stop and really look at that stuff, you don't understand it. And then the moment you understand it, then you can start to go, oh, what can I do about that? And I like the what you were talking about in terms of kind of stepping back and asking yourself, what if, what if, hey, I always turn in at the end of the curbing. What if I turned in 3 feet before that? What if I turned in 3 feet after that? What if I looked there rather than here? What if I felt that? What if I heard that? So I'm a big fan of keep asking yourself, what if? And like you said, it's a time for discovery. I really like that. I'm going to steal that from you.
Go for it.
Yeah.
I didn't trademark a thing, so we're good.
Really? Oh,
no,
you should have. No.
Yeah. So I've read a couple of articles that mentioned you or you wrote about taking track walks. When in your driver development do you think you need to take your first track walk?
Good question. And I will say that this is dependent on the driver and probably, how they tend to learn things, but also their experience level. I personally, I deliberately, if I can, do not do a track walk until after I've driven the track at least once. And that may have been different way back in time when I started, when we didn't have things like YouTube videos and everything else. But now you can do so much preparation before you get there. I can remember the first time I drove Sebring, and until I showed up at the track, the only thing I had was a track map and an article that somebody had written about how to drive around Sebring. And there were no videos, there was no data, there was nothing.
Right.
So, walking the track then was good because it kind of helped me piece things together from the little information I had. Nowadays, to me, so let me talk through the process that I think you go through is the very, very first thing still today. I don't care how much technology we have. The most important thing is you start with a track map, and you can download them on my website. But you start with that track map, and you should be able to, you should have that track map memorized and imprinted into your brain so that if somebody says something about turn 7, you don't have to go, turn 7, is that the right-hander or the left-hander? You look at that track map and you see yourself driving around it. So you need to do that. Nowadays, many spend time on a simulator, and that can really, really help. Sometimes it doesn't give you all the little pieces, but do that if you can. Watch some video. As we all know, everything that's on YouTube is not perfectly accurate. There are some in-car videos that are not worth watching, and unfortunately, they're not titled, "This video is not worth watching." I don't think anybody has used that yet. Maybe I should try that. But you watch a few different videos and try to pick out what you see are trends. And then personally for me, you want to get to the point where before you even get to the track, you could close your eyes and you can see yourself in your mind going around the track. It doesn't have to be super accurate in terms of I brake here, I turn in here, even, how long it takes to get around the track. All you really want to be able to do is go, I know which corner is coming up. It's that corner it's a tight right-hander as opposed to a sweeping left-hander. You need to know that. And so to me, when you get there and then you can go and drive the track. And then to me, that's the perfect time to then go and do a track walk. And the reason is that now you've got some accurate information that you can work with. You're not trying to make it all up beforehand. And like I said, you've hopefully gone out in that first session and you've experimented a little bit. You've turned in a little earlier. You turned in a little later. You've tried heavy braking. You've tried light braking. You've tried getting on the throttle early. You've tried getting on a little bit late. You've tried some things, and then you've tried things and you go, well, that didn't work. Now, when you go and do your track walk, you can ask yourself, why did that not work? And so, if hey, let's say I'm going to a 3-day race weekend. Ideally, I would do a track walk at the end of Friday. Mm-hmm. At the end of that day. Hopefully I've got a session or two or whatever on Friday. And then I would do it Friday evening. If it was in the perfect world, I would do it again Saturday morning. Usually that's
usually not the
rarely
case.
Possible, unless you happen to jump the fence at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't recommend that.
Not advice, not legal advice anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. But don't be afraid to do 2 track walks on a weekend. So maybe again, Saturday night, you can do another one. And really what you're doing is you're taking what you've learned through the experience and then going back there and trying to cement it in with what you learned by doing the track walk. And then, that just, you then use that to do some more mental imagery, visualization of driving the track again. So it's constantly filling in the pieces. I often say that the driver that has the most references wins. Now, references we tend to think about as there's a crack in the pavement, there is the 4 marker on the braking, there's the, apex is the 3rd red panel on the curbing, whatever, like visual things. But a lot of references are what we feel. There are corners where you go, bump, I turn in. Bump, I turn in. Bump, I turn in. Hey, I didn't feel the bump. I might not be in the right place where I usually am. And so we use references. References can also be what we feel. And that's where doing the track walk, you notice little subtle things that you normally wouldn't at speed. And you mentioned earlier on, about doing it on a scooter or a bicycle. Hey, again, I'm painting my picture of my perfect weekend here. I would do a track walk on Friday night. I would do a track ride on Saturday night. And there's something about walking and, being able to stop and kind of move your foot on that surface and move your foot on that surface and go, that seems to have more grip. That seems to have less grip. You can do things like that. You can kind of stop, you squat down, you turn around, all that kind of stuff. But then when you go and ride it on a bicycle or a scooter, you feel the little undulations. You feel that more than you would when you're walking, because we've got these little suspension systems called kneecaps or knees in our legs. And sometimes we don't feel it as we just walk along. but you ride a bicycle and you feel the bike just kind of roll along into little undulations and camber changes and things like that. So again, if I'm creating my perfect weekend, that's what it would look like.
So when you go out, are you bringing your track map with you?
Yes. I'm a big, I used to carry paper track maps. My pockets were always filled with them. Now I have them all digitally. I have them on an iPad and on my phone. And, one of the things that I'll do on a track walk now is if I have what I've identified as a really good in-car video, I have that on my phone. And as I come up to a corner, I might stop and play the video of just that section of track. Because I'm trying to cement in where's my begin of braking point? Where's my end of braking point? Where should my eyes be? Where am I turning in? Where do I want the car placed? What angle do I want the car placed at while clipping past the apex? And again, I can watch this, just pull up my phone and look at it on a in-car video. And the video may not be perfect, but again, it gets me asking a question of what if? What happens? Why is that car in that position? So yes, carry the track map with you. And if you carry an iPad like I do, you can actually make notes with your little pencil or whatever. As you're going around, I know I've seen drivers making, they're doing the little talking into their phone and making notes, kind of like, oh, notice the crack in the pavement just before the end of the curbing here. So they're creating notes about the track by talking into their phone, recording that. So lots of ways of doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. You went full tech on me with this iPad thing. I don't even have that going on. I was going to ask you whether you use the pencil or pen, but
I do. I mean, I've gotten, I really like doing notes with the Apple Pencil on my iPad. And what I like about it is it's just a whole lot easier because I like to keep those things. And, for many years I'd come home from an event and I'd get the old 3-ring binder punch out and punch the map and put it into a binder. And, I have these big folders and binders laying around all the time. And now it's just, I just click on the folder and go to Mid-Ohio. Give me some of my track maps. And I can go back and look at track notes going back decades because a lot of them I've scanned now. But I can just go back and go, what were the notes that I used or I had given to my driver that I was coaching last year at Mid-Ohio, for example. And it could be a different car, but just looking at those notes and going, okay, this is what that driver needed to work on. Drivers are not totally unique. If you struggled with something on one particular corner, there's a good chance that other drivers would be doing the same thing. So I like being able to go back, and if I have them all digitally, I can look at them at any time, anywhere.
Yeah. You have the iPad. Are there do you bring any tools with you? Like, I know they have apps on your phone where you can set it'll tell you the angle of the road or the angle of anything. Have you used any of that stuff while you're out there?
I've tried that once. A friend and I were doing a track walk and we tried that. And eventually I just went, what are we doing? Like, let's you just got to feel it. Like, now we're overcomplicating it.
Right.
And again, but it might work for some people. It didn't work for me. It was like, I'm not getting anything out of doing that. Now I have stopped, and actually one of the other things I like to do often, not all the time, but as I'm doing a track walk, I'll just take photos of the track, kind of squat down so that I'm at the height that I would see the track at in the car or the driver that I'm coaching, and take photos at various places, because afterwards you can you can often, as a coach, it might be the next afternoon and we're doing a little debrief after the session and the driver says, something about turn 3, and I can just go through my photos and pull it up and go, you mean when you're approaching from this point right here? And the great thing about digital photos and even the digital maps that I have on my website is they're meant to, you can zoom in, right? You can zoom in and make notes on it. And that's why I actually paid somebody a few years ago to go through and create, I picked the top or most popular 100 track maps or tracks and had them create track maps using Google Earth, but then just drawing the outline of the track, which then makes it so that you can make notes on that track map as opposed to, a solid line going around, or like a lot of track maps have a lot of other stuff on it. These are meant to be used to make notes on them. And so the great thing about doing it digitally is you can zoom in and you can make little detailed there's a little dot there. That's, that's a crack in the pavement. And I've gotten to the point where using my iPad and the pencil and that is, I have a system, right? Anything that I write in red has something to do with braking. Anything I write in green has something to do with the throttle. Anything I write in blue has something to do with the line. Then I might use, I'll use yellow often to go, if I'm making notes for a driver that I'm coaching, I might go in yellow. That will be, your min speed is down 2 miles an hour here, or you're losing 0.12 of a second through this segment of the track. So it's kind of like that. And then black is sort of my overall, I'll write the top 3 priorities of what to work on for the next session. So that's rather than a paper map and trying to carry 5 colored pens around with me. Yeah. I know I'm sounding like, wow, boy, Mr. Technology, he uses an iPad. Whoa. Yeah, not. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you're a big believer in reference points, and you're quoted multiple times saying the most driver with the most reference points wins. Are we looking just for reference points while we're out on a track walk?
Certainly not just, but I think about references as they're sort of your primary references. Those are typically, as you're approaching a corner, the begin of braking, BOB. There's the turn in point. There's the end of braking, EOB. There's the apex, and there's the track out or exit point. Those are typically the big key primary references. But if that's all we ever had, it'd be like one of those kids' drawings, where they draw from the 1 to the 2 to the 3, and eventually it draws an outline of a elephant or a whatever, right? A clown or whatever.
Yeah, connect the dots.
Connect the dots thing, right? And the more of the little dots that you can put in between the primary ones, the smoother that line is going to be. And so, between the turn-in point and the apex, there's probably going to be a crack in the pavement, a change in the surface, a seam in the paving, a bump, something like that, scrapes in it. There's going to be something. And sometimes it's just a matter of making note of those things. And because, if you turn in early and the next reference point that you have is the apex and you've turned in early, your adjustment at the apex is going to be really big. But if you turn in early and there's a crack in the pavement that you straddle normally, but this time you didn't straddle, your left side tires were on it, for example, you've recognized that you're not on the right line much earlier. So now the adjustment's much earlier. So that's why references are important. I do recognize that some drivers some drivers are very big on visual references, and even that can be sort of broken down into two. When Peter Krause and I do the virtual track walks videos together, it's funny because Peter will be talking about coming through a corner and he's like, you see that tower, 87 miles off in the distance, line the car up with that. And I'm going, Peter, I've never seen that tower in my life, and I've driven 1,000 laps of this track. For me, it's a seam in the pavement I want the car on. And so I understand that drivers see things differently. And, but if if I normally see this seam in the pavement and that's what I use to have the car straddle and go over, but I do know there's a pole in the distance, and for whatever reason, there's a car in front of me and it's blocking my view of what I normally would see. I do have maybe a secondary, or it's kind of almost a third level of reference of that pole in the distance. Or flip that around, if I always look for that pole in the distance, but again, there's a car in the way or something, a storm came through last night and blew the tree down, the pole down. I want to have as many references as I can. And so certainly a big part of doing a track walk is to help you collect more references and file them away in that database in your head.
Oh, for sure. Another thing that I got after my first track walk was when I did identify a new reference point, I should have probably been able to see this reference point on the track or whatever, especially when I was looking at the curbing and things like that. When I was at speed, I sort of got that slow-mo vision for my reference point because I knew where to expect it now. At speed, I never would have seen it, but now that I know it's there, I see it. It sort of came to me a little bit.
Yes, that's a really, really good point. Once you've seen it on the track walk, it's you can't unsee it at speed almost. Yeah.
For sure.
And actually, I was thinking about this as you were talking about that. I'm going, one of the other things, and I know this does not fit into the category of track walk, but it's related, is one of the things that I think more drivers should do is they should go to the spectator areas and view corners from different angles. Because when you see, often drivers will, I'll give them a blank piece of paper and say, draw me the track. And, it starts off and it wiggles around, comes back, and it's like, well, those don't meet. The end of the what you're drawing and the beginning do not meet. And the reason is they don't have that global perspective. And sometimes when you go and, I'm thinking about the times that I've taken a driver at Watkins Glen, for example, and gone up on the hill above turn 7, the toe of the boot. And you're looking down on that. And I've had drivers go, oh, I didn't realize it's a 180-degree corner. And so seeing it from the outside perspective is also important as well. So, and it's also interesting to go and, watch some other cars go through a corner and go, again, ask yourself your question. What if? Why are they doing that?
Mm-hmm.
It makes you think.
Yeah, I drive a front wheel drive car. So it's, when you look at front wheel drive cars, we're all sort of doing similar things, but then you see a 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive car attack the same corner and you're like, why are they doing that exactly? The rear wheel drive guys, they come in with a crazy pitch angle usually. But their markers, they're different and they create different things, different yaw rates going into corners usually, but they're always doing it for a reason. And there's probably a reason you shouldn't do it, but there's probably not a reason you shouldn't try because it might be better. You won't know until you look at your data. So it might be worth trying.
Again, a great point in that I love the it's worth trying. I, Again, maybe a little bit off the topic of track walks, but I see a lot of drivers who it's been pounded in their head, be consistent, be consistent, be consistent. And in the beginning, early on, you need to be consistent, because if you try something and you weren't consistent before, you don't know whether that worked or didn't work because you were just inconsistent or because you didn't accomplish it well. So at some point, you need to be consistent. But I see some drivers who are too afraid to experiment, to try things. And, it could be the fear of the consequences of that going bad. And I get that. But I think you need to experiment and try things to learn, to get better. And when you reach a certain level, and again, I guess bringing it back to the track walk, if you've walked the track and thought about those things while you're walking the track, you're better prepared for it. Even to the point of, I'm definitely not a big fan of focusing on negatives, but you're walking a track and you look over and you go, there's a lot of runoff right over there. If I'm going to experiment, that's probably not a bad corner to do it. Next corner, there's a big ditch on the outside over there. That leads to an Armco barrier. That's not the corner I want to spend a little time on or experiment on. And even I have walked tracks, a very famous one on the West Coast a couple of years ago, and realized that, hey, if you drop a wheel there, it is at best going to destroy your car. At worst, it's going to trip the car, roll it, and, well, that's going to damage the car too. But at speed, I never would have seen that. Mm-hmm. It was like a ditch that would trip a car. So there's advantages of looking at, if things go bad here, what am I going to do about it?
So yeah, for sure.
Something else to learn from a track walk.
Yeah. A lot of times at speed, especially when you're newer, everything is coming at you fast, right? When you're at speed. During the track walk, everything is at literally your pace. Yeah. There's almost no consequences. There's been several tracks where people, I don't know their level of inebriation, but they got injured, or I think even one person died on a track walk. Okay. Ugh. So that goes back to your mentality and your mindset. Yeah. It's a learning time. It's a time to step up your race program in your game, and, don't go out there multiple sheets into the wind is my recommendation, because you're probably not going to remember or not follow whatever your system is for writing things down very well. But there are issues like that, but it's literally your speed. You can go off in turn one and just walk and go to the barrier and turn around.
Yeah.
And then you'll really see how far away it is,
And to your point, there are a lot of drivers that look at track walks as a social event. Mm-hmm. I've seen drivers out having a beer, walking around, and, I'm not against having a good, enjoyable time on a weekend, but there are limits. And one of my, I don't know, not pet peeves, but one of the things that I just kind of shake my head at times is I will see 6-8 drivers all walking together in a big group. And it's a big party. It's social time. And again, I don't want to say don't ever do that, because, hey, part of the reason we do what we do is to have fun. And if that's fun, then do that. But if you're looking at your track walk as a tool to help you learn and improve, then rarely would I ever do a track walk with more than 2 other people. And those 2 other people need to be contributors. And the contribution they provide, maybe they just ask questions that make me think. Sometimes they're like, well, in my experience, this has happened, and that makes me think. But when it starts to get more than 3 people in a group, it's hard to be focused. And the other thing that sort of related to that is I see people walking a track, and where they are walking is nowhere near the line. I think that when you walk the track, walk the line. Ideally, if you're walking with two friends, you should be walking in single file because all three of you should be in line walking along the line. Now, okay, there's a little bit of leeway there, but I see people walking way off the line, and part of the reason for a track walk is to program your brain. It's to cement what it is that you're seeing and feeling and putting it into your brain and making it boom. That's a solid mental program. And when you're not walking on the line, that's no different than going out and turning 20 laps offline. How is that helping you?
Right.
Right. And,
it's not.
Yes, enjoy it. But if you really, really want to learn from the track walk, do it by yourself with maybe another person, maybe two other people. Again, if you're starting to get bigger groups than that, I'm not sure what you're learning out of that. Yeah. I got to say this because I'm sitting here and I'm looking behind you on the wall and the name of your podcast. And I'm going, one of the things that we do on a track walk is we see corners that are blind.
Mm-hmm.
And we can stop at the entry to the corner, and the apex is up and over the crest of the hill on the other side. And you can stop and you could just sit there and go, can I see that? Can I see it in my mind? So it's kind of like you're making the blind apex unblind. How's that?
Yeah, that's great. My track walk solved South Bend for me at VIR.
Yeah.
It solved it because your turn-in point and where your apex is not visible. It is in the exits, definitely not visible. So,
right.
And that's why we named this podcast, that is the ode to that corner. So, but you're right. You will get to see everything. And I implore you to go to where the apex is and then try to find your entry point.
Yes.
And there are some spots where you're standing, you could almost see it. Especially if you take one of your friends and you tell them to stand there, you will see it. And vice versa, So
actually, and that's a good point that, when I do walk a track with somebody else, and often it's the driver that I'm coaching, there'll be times where I will say, okay, you stand at the turning point, and I'll run ahead and run up to the exit or the apex or the exit of the corner and give them that target. Because, and again, then it's like, okay, now squat down to the level you are when you're in the car. Can you see this? It's getting harder, but you can start to see that path that leads to that, because now you've programmed where the apex or the exit is, but you can think about it as, how do I get there?
Yeah, and you may pull a Peter Krause and find that marker in the skyline to get you there. So
yeah. I'm sure. Well, especially at VIR, Peter's got those things everywhere. So
I'm pretty sure he coined the one that was like, you look for the tech shed for turn 3 as you're driving towards turn 3. I'm sure he was the one at the S's. You have to look at the oak tree that's all the way at the top of the S's.
Yeah.
And aim for that. And I'm like, okay.
What oak tree? Yeah.
Yeah. Which one?
Yeah.
Now they knocked half of them down. So good luck with that, depending on what you're doing, because they're building more villas. But
well, and that's another point is, every time you go to a track, one of the things about tracks is they change. And, just when you think, okay, I know this track, you show up and you go, why does that apex curb really upsetting the car now? and you go into a track walk and you go, oh, well, they've reprofiled the apex curbing. So it's part of it's an opportunity for you to update your programming.
For sure. And sometimes the track didn't do it on purpose. Sometimes an accident occurred and it dug something out of the surface,
Yeah.
And you're like, what happened to this pristine asphalt?
Yeah. Somebody's taken that little divot out of the pavement. Well, it's a new reference. It can be helpful too. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, sir, do we have anything else you want to talk about with track walks, you think?
I love the idea of, like you said, discovery. And to me, it's all about your programming your brain. And the more that we can get in our brain programmed to that level where we no longer have to think about it, we just do, the more brain power we've got, the more bandwidth we've got to deal with other things. And, other cars on track, or, hey, what if I did that? What if I changed that? If you're having to use all of your brain power to just find your way around the track, you don't have that track programmed into your brain. And again, track walk is a key part of the process of doing that.
Yeah, I really think it is, even with all the technology, even with YouTube videos, even with all that, sim racing, all the stuff you can do to prepare. I think, especially like you said, after practice day, if you can get that track walk in, it will help tie everything you've done, all the work you've been doing. It ties it all together, and then it gives you another level of discovery.
Yeah. And actually, you mentioned sim racing, and I have a simraceracademy.com, and one of the exercises, one of the drills that I recommend to sim racers is you can do a track walk. Basically, drive your sim car around the track at 2 miles an hour and stop. And depending on which software, what you're using, or if you're using VR or whatever, or versus a monitor or monitors, you can physically turn around and do the same kind of thing. So, hey, if you're a sim racer, listen to this, or you use a simulator a lot, do virtual track walks. No pun intended there. So, but do a simulated track walk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you coming back on, sir. You're always welcome.
Just let me, you're twisting my arm, really forcing me to talk about driving and what I love to do. So I'm anytime. And yeah.
Well, I won't make you commit like Bill and Vicky did to their, was it every 50 episodes or something? So
yes. Every 50 episodes. And it's always, what are we doing this time? and I love it. So yeah, I got to say, I mean, the podcast, you said that you're in the top 100. Congrats on that. That's really cool.
I appreciate it.
What I love is there are a few, and I don't know what the number is, but there's a few sort of grassroots motorsport aimed podcasts that I listen to. I can't say that I listen to every episode every week or anything like that, but I like listening to it because I love, I guess one of the things that I never want to forget is where I began, and I want to keep that beginner's mindset. Like I want to know what is it that people are struggling with. And so I love listening to your podcast and the Garage Heroes and Training one, except for every 50 episodes on that one, because then I'd have to listen to myself and I don't want to do that. So
yeah, I feel you. I don't listen to my own podcasts anymore because between recording and editing and uploading and all the social media stuff, I get plenty of my own voice. So
yes. But yeah, so thanks for doing what you're doing, and it's great for the sport, and it's helping keeps our sport growing.
Until next time, keep working on yourself, keep working on the car, and let's get faster.